It is the 18th of February, 2021, which is crazy. I do hope that we have a better year than last year, seemingly all the insanity that we went through. And I know that a lot of you are suffering and having difficulties, just managing life because of the instability and uncertainty that is overwhelmingly affecting so many people's lives, especially with small business owners and those of you that are in the food industry where you're serving meals or connected to catering to individuals' needs in that manner. But anyways, this evening, we usually every other week, Rob and I, we come on each other's show. But living in Texas, his power is out and has been for 4 days, and so they've been living on a generator and trying to keep the house warm with the propane. And I also saw that it's unusually cold there, and that the pipes have burst in a lot of places as well. And so, um, very, very unusual. And it was very cold here as well, just about 2 or 3 days ago. But thankfully, we didn't lose power. And, I have a fireplace just for in case of a situation like that anyways. And I think that fireplaces, fire pits, and are great for a backup scenario, just in case power does go down, and at least you're able to sustain one room of the house and heat, and people can gather there and bundle up and just kind of um, congregate around the fire, which is the fire is always a beautiful ambience and sets a peaceful tone to an evening. And being able to stay warm, what a blessing that is. Unfortunately, there were stories of people and families suffering and dying, even freezing to death because of having no place to go to be out of the cold. And somebody had told me of a story of a mother and her children going out into their car because the house was so cold. And unfortunately, they had succumbed to the elements because of that decision as well. But it's unfortunate. And so I pray that all of you out there are in warmth and comfort and not suffering in any manner. But this evening, I'm going to continue with the Archko volume and the series that I have been doing in reading a lot of that material. And for those that don't know, the Archko volume is a series of eyewitness testimony of the different individuals that were privy to and that had personal relationship with Yahushua during the time that he was embodied in the flesh and leading up to his passion, as well as his resurrection and the miracles that were witnessed by so many, and the reports that came forth, which dating to the first century and to the time and the life of Christ while he was incarnate here upon the earth. These are really amazing stories, and they give us a confirming witness to the gospel and present to us accounts which not a lot of people are familiar. And one of the reasons why we did bring this book out in print in this manner was to introduce those of you that had never heard or never had chance to read this material to this incredible testimony, these many eyewitness reports from, even the shepherds that were said to be witness to his birth outside of Bethlehem in what was the cave of Rachel, where Rachel had been buried when she had passed as Jacob was moving through the land. But there's also an eyewitness testimony of Gamaliel, the Pharisee who went out and spoke to Joseph and Mary and some of the other individuals that knew Yahushua, and that recounted their stories and their experiences and what they were familiar with in regard to the disposition, the behavior, and the tendencies of Christ, his preferences, and his interactions with others. There's also the accounts of Lazarus and Mary Magdalene and Martha in these stories, because they were lifelong friends and they were really closely related to and knew Christ deeply in very intimate manner. And then, there's the story of Pontius Pilate and of Herod, Caiaphas during the time of the trials and the persecution, the stories of the soldiers that were witness to his resurrection, his ascension, his reemergence as the light of the world, that they without a doubt announced that they had witnessed the miracle of his resurrection. And which was something that was essentially told to the people beforehand. Now, I hope that everybody in the, as far as the TFR chat, that all of you are able to hear me without problem, as I was not able to hear the music, the introduction. And so I don't know if there's something wrong with the stream, but we are live streaming as well to our YouTube channel. And so if you'd like to go there to join in the fellowship and the chat with others, just, the Zen Garcia YouTube channel, you can find all those that are gathered and that are listening. And so we'll just kind of go by the breaks, and even without the music and the sound, I'll just try to keep track with everything in that manner. And so we will pick up next week. Those of you that, closely follow our work, that I was not able to join Rob last week for the late night Wednesday broadcast, midnight to 2 a.m., which is extremely late for me. And without him being able to make it this Thursday, that'll put us 2 weeks behind. But still, we'll catch up with the studies next week, and there's a lot of really incredible material to cover and to go through, and I'm looking forward to picking up that series. But in the meantime, we'll press on with the Archko volume, and I'm going to take a look at take a look at to see where I was. Well, definitely we were in the story of Pontius Pilate. As he declared and spoke about the passion of Christ. So I'm just trying to look to see exactly where we were. Now, I believe I had begun the report, Pilate's report to Tiberius Caesar, the Emperor of Rome. But I do recall that I did not make it past the supernatural occurrences of what was going on at the time of his crucifixion. But I do believe that I had read the portion that gives a physical description of him, but because it's been a little while, it won't hurt for us to backtrack. And so I'll just go to the beginning of Pilate's report to Tiberius Caesar. We'll just start there, and then I think that would be appropriate. All right, so and this is a really incredible account as well. And so we'll pick it up here. Noble sovereign, greeting. The events of the last few days in my province have been of such a character that I will give the details in full as they occurred, as I should not be surprised if, in the course of time, they may change the destiny of our nation. For it seems of late that all the gods have ceased to be propitious. I am almost ready to say, cursed be the day that I succeeded Valerius Flacius in the government of Judea, for since then my life has been one of continual uneasiness and distress. On my arrival at Jerusalem, I took possession of the praetorium and ordered a splendid feast to be prepared, to which I invited the tetrarch of Galilee with the high priest and his officers. At the appointed hour, no guests appeared. This I considered an insult offered to my dignity and to the whole government which I represent. A few days after, the high priest deigned to pay me a visit. His deportment was grave and deceitful. He pretended that his religion forbade him and his attendants to sit at the table of the Romans and eat and offer libations with them. But this was only a sanctimonious seeming, for his very countenance betrayed his hypocrisy. Although I thought it expedient to accept his excuse, from that moment I was convinced that the conquered had declared themselves the enemy of the high priest of this country. They would betray their own mother to gain office and a luxurious living. It seems to me that of conquered cities, Jerusalem is the most difficult to govern. So turbulent are the people that I live in momentary dread of an insurrection. I have not soldiers sufficient to suppress it. I had only one centurion and 100 men at my command. I requested a reinforcement from the prefect of Syria, who informed me that he had scarcely troops sufficient to defend his own province and insatiate thirst for conquest to extend our empire beyond the means of defending it. I fear will be the cause of the final overthrow, for I did not know what those priests might influence the rabble to do, yet I endeavored to ascertain, as far as I could, the mind and the standing of the people. Among the various rumors that came to my ears, there was one in particular that attracted my attention. A young man, it was said, had appeared in Galilee preaching with a noble unction a new law in the name of God that had sent him. At first, I was apprehensive that his design was to stir up the people against the Romans, but my fears were soon dispelled. Jesus of Nazareth spoke rather as friend of the Romans than of the Jews. One day in passing by the place of Silo, where there was a great concourse of people, I observed in the midst of the Jews, one day in passing by, there was a great concourse of people, a group of a young man who was leaning against a tree, calmly addressing the multitude. I was told that it was Jesus. This I could easily have suspected, so great was the difference between him and those listening to him. His golden colored hair and beard gave to his appearance a celestial aspect. He appeared to be about 30 years of age, and never have I seen a sweeter or more serene countenance. What a contrast between him and his hearers with their black beards and tawny complexions. Now, I will state, and I know that, the physical description of Yahushua is very controversial topic, especially among the biblical Israelites. However, this account is also verified by the Testament that comes forth. In the letters, the writings to Tiberius from Pontius Pilate, which there is a different account as well, not found in the Archko volume, that was part of the Senate record. And there's also the story of the physical description of Gamaliel, who describes Christ in exactly the same manner as what we see attested to here. And so, those of you that believe another way, just only sharing with you what the eyewitness testimonies say for themselves. And if you choose, to believe that there's some kind of conspiracy or that, somebody's distorting the imagery in some manner, well, you can believe what you want, but there are multiple witnesses that describe the same thing. And I will also add that it is also said in these stories of the Native Americans about the pale healer that they are in their records and in their histories they all speak about having met with Christ as well, and that he made journeys across both North and South America in bringing forth the teaching of the kingdom to the native peoples, which is a fascinating, fascinating tale. You can find the book, it's called He Walked the Americas, to get the anthropological records of those oral traditions as they were written down by a anthropologist after long relationship and gaining the trust of the different elders of the native tribes. Unwilling to interrupt him by my presence, I continued my walk, but signified to my secretary to join the group and listen. My secretary's name is Manlius. He is the grandson of the chief of the conspirators, who encamped in Etruria, waiting for Catiline. Manlius had been for a long time an inhabitant of Judea, and is well acquainted with the Hebrew language. He was devoted to me and worthy of my confidence. On entering the praetorium, I found Manlius, who related to me the words Jesus had pronounced at Silo. Never have I read in the works of the philosophers anything that can compare to the maxims of Jesus. One of the rebellious Jews, so numerous in Jerusalem, having asked Jesus if it was lawful to give tribute to Caesar, he replied, "Render unto Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and unto God the things that are God's." We're just a few minutes out from break. And so we see, again, verification of the divine providence of Christ, even as it was recognized by Pontius Pilate. It was on account of the wisdom of his sayings that I granted so much liberty to the Nazarene, for it was in my power to have had him arrested and exiled to Pontus. But that would have been contrary to the justice which has always characterized the Roman government in all its dealings with men. This man was neither seditious nor rebellious. I extended to him my protection, unknown perhaps to himself. He was at liberty to act, to speak, to assemble, and to address the people, and to choose disciples unrestrained by any praetorian mandate. Should it ever happen, may the gods avert the omen. Should it ever happen, I say, that the religion of the forefathers will be supplanted by the religion of Jesus, it will be this noble toleration that Rome should owe her premature death, while I, miserable wretch, will have been the instrument of what the Jews call providence, and what we call destiny. This unlimited freedom granted to Jesus provoked the Jews, not the poor, but the rich and the powerful. It is true Jesus was severe on the latter, and this was a political reason, in my opinion, for not restraining the liberty of the Nazarene. Scribes and Pharisees, he would say to them, you are a race of vipers. You resemble painted sepulchres. You appear well unto men, but you have death within you. At other times he would sneer at the alms of the rich and poor, telling them that the mite of the poor was more precious in the sight of God. Complaints were daily made at the praetorium against the insolence of Jesus. All right, let me check. I think we are. Yeah, we're at break now, so we'll be right back for a second portion.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
What is very interesting about the next aspect of this reading especially as it comes from, the Roman guard and Pontius Pilate, and as the governor of Judea is, they, did not know about the prophecies or of the supernatural divine providence that would be associated with the ministry of Christ as Messiah, and that he would be Redeemer, and that there would be prophecy even dating back to the time of Adam, the first, as far as contemporary man, in the beginning of the 6,000 years of the Second World Age, that being removed from paradise, even at that time, that there would be, all these many, many prophecies which would be fulfilled, and also of his death, resurrection, and ascension. That all of that's really the most important portion of his spiritual ministry, and overcoming death and showing that, of course, he holds the authority for, the what would be the miracles that he would manifest all throughout his walk and labor in and around Jerusalem, and which were witnessed by everybody. It was undeniable that he had the power to heal the sick, to raise the dead, and to cleanse the lepers, and to cast out the demons. Without a doubt, those that saw his work and that were witness to it, that he was unrivaled, unequaled in his authority over the devils and the demons that plague and possess people. And so let's continue. I think the YouTube live stream has caught up with us, so let us begin again. I was even informed that some misfortune would befall him, that would it not be the first time that Jerusalem had stoned those who called themselves prophets. An appeal would be made to Caesar. However, my conduct was approved by the Senate, and I was promised a reinforcement after the termination of the Parthian War. Being too weak to suppress an insurrection, I resolved upon adopting a measure that promised to restore the tranquility of the city without subjecting to the praetorium humiliating concession. I wrote to Jesus requesting an interview with him at the praetorium. He came. You know that in my veins flows the Spanish mixed with Roman blood, as incapable of fear as it was of weak emotion. When the Nazarene made his appearance, I was walking in my basilic, and my feet seemed fastened with an iron hand to the marble pavement, and I trembled in every limb, as does a guilty culprit. The Nazarene was as calm as innocence itself. When he came up to me, he stopped, and by a signal sign, he seemed to say to me, I am here, though he spoke not a word. For some time I contemplated with admiration and awe this extraordinary type of man, a type of man unknown to our numerous painters, who've given form and figure to all the gods and the heroes. There was nothing about him that was repelling in its character. Yet I felt too awed and tremulous to approach him. Jesus said I unto him at last, and my tongue faltered, Jesus of Nazareth, for the last 3 years I have granted you ample freedom of speech, nor do I regret it. Your words are those of a sage. I know not whether you have read Socrates or Plato, but this I know. There is in your discourses a majestic simplicity that elevates you far above those philosophers. The emperor is informed of it, and I, his humble representative in this country, am glad of having allowed you that liberty of which you are so worthy. However, I must not conceal from you that your discourses have raised up against you powerful and inveterate enemies. Nor is this surprising. Socrates had his enemies, and he fell a victim to their hatred. Yours are doubly incensed against you, on account of your discourses being so severe upon their conduct. Against me, on account of the livery I have afforded you. They even accuse me of being indirectly leagued with you for the purpose of depriving the Hebrews of the little civil power which Rome has left them. My request, I do not say, my order is that you be more circumspect and moderate in your discourses. In the future, and more considerate of them, lest you arouse the pride of your enemies, and they raise against you the stupid populace, and compel me to employ the instruments of law. The Nazarene calmly replied, Prince of the earth, your words proceed not from the true wisdom. Say to the torrent to stop in the midst of the mountain gorge. It will uproot the tree of the wily. The torrent will answer you that it obeys the laws of nature and the Creator. God alone knows whither flow the waters of the torrent. Verily I say unto you, before the rose of Sharon blossoms, the blood of the just shall be spilt. Your blood shall not be spilt, said I, with deep emotion. You are more precious in my estimation on account of your wisdom than all the turbulent and proud Pharisees who abuse the freedom granted them by the Romans. They conspire against Caesar and convert his bounty into fear. impressing the unlearned that Caesar is a tyrant and seeks their ruin. Insolent wretches, they are not aware that the wolf of the Tiber sometimes clothes himself with the skin of the sheep to accomplish his wicked designs. I will protect you against them. My praetorium shall be an asylum, sacred both day and night. Jesus carelessly shook his head and said with a grave and divine smile, when the days shall have come, there will be no asylum for the Son of Man, neither in the earth nor under the earth. The asylum of the just is there, pointing to the heavens. That which is written in the books of the prophets must be accomplished. Young man, I answered mildly, you will oblige me to convert my request into an order. The safety of the province which has been confided to my care requires it. You must observe more moderation in your discourses. Do not infringe my order. You will know the consequences. May happiness attend you, and farewell. Prince of the earth, replied Jesus, I come not to bring war into the world, but peace, love, and charity. I was born the same day on which Augustus Caesar gave peace to the Roman world. Persecutions proceed not from me. I expect it from others and will meet it in obedience to the will of my Father, who has shown me the way. Restrain, therefore, your worldly prudence. It is not in your power to arrest the victim at the foot of the tabernacle of expiation. So saying, he disappeared like a bright shadow behind the curtains of the basilic, to my great relief, for I felt the heavy burden on me, of which I could not relieve myself while in his presence. To Herod, who then reigned in Galilee, the enemies of Jesus addressed themselves to wreak their vengeance on the Nazarene. Had Herod consulted his own inclinations, he would have ordered Jesus immediately to be put to death. But though proud of his royal dignity, yet he hesitated to commit an act that might lessen his influence. But though proud of his royal dignity, yet he hesitated to commit an act that might lessen his influence with the Senate, or like me, was afraid of Jesus. But it would never do for a Roman officer to be scared by a Jew. Previously to this, Herod called on me at the praetorium, and on rising to take leave, after some trifling conversation, asked me what was my opinion concerning the Nazarene. I replied that Jesus appeared to me to be one of those great philosophers that great nations sometimes produced, that his doctrines were by no means sacrilegious, and that the intentions of the Roman were to leave him to that freedom of speech, which was justified by his actions. Herod smiled maliciously, and saluting me with ironical respect, departed. The great feast of the Jews was approaching, and the intention was to avail themselves of the popular exaltation which always manifests itself at the solemnities of the Passover. The city was overflowing with the tumultuous populace clamoring for the death of Zacharin. My emissaries informed me that the treasurer of the temple had been employed in bribing the people. The danger was pressing. A Roman centurion had been insulted. I wrote to the prefect of Syria for 100 foot soldiers and as many cavalry. He declined. I saw myself alone with a handful of veterans in the midst of a rebellious city too weak to suppress an uprising, and having no choice left but to tolerate it. They had seized upon Jesus and the seditious rabble, although they had nothing to fear from the praetorium, believing, as their leaders had told them, that I winked at their sedition. Continued vociferating, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" 3 powerful parties had combined together at that time against Jesus. First, the Herodians and the Sadducees, whose seditious conduct seemed to have proceeded from double motives. They hated the Nazarene and were impatient of the Roman yoke. They never forgave me for having entered the holy city with banners that bore the image of the Roman emperor. And although in this instance I had committed a fatal error, yet the sacrilege did not appear less heinous in their eyes. Another grievance also rankled in their bosoms. I had proposed to employ a part of the treasure of the temple in erecting edifices for public use. My proposal hold on just a second here. Another grievance also rankled in their bosoms. I had proposed to employ a part of the treasure of the temple in erecting edifices for public use. My proposal was scorned. The Pharisees were the avowed enemies of Jesus. They cared not for the government. They bore with bitterness the severe reprimands which the Nazarene for 3 years had been continually giving them wherever he went. Timid and too weak to act, by themselves they had embraced the quarrels of the Herodians and the Sadducees. And beside these 3 parties, I had to contend against the reckless and profligate populace, always ready to join a sedition and to profit by the disorder and the confusion that resulted therefrom. Jesus was dragged before the high priest and condemned to death. It was then that the high priest Caiaphas performed advisory act of submission. He sent his prisoner to me to confirm his condemnation and secure his execution. I answered him that as Jesus was a Galilean, the affair came under Herod's jurisdiction, and ordered him to be sent thither. The wily tetrarch professed humility in protesting his deference to the lieutenant of Caesar. He committed the fate of the man to my hands. Soon my palace assumed the aspect of the man to my hands. Soon my palace assumed the aspect of a besieged citadel. Every moment increased the number of the malcontents. Jerusalem was inundated with crowds from the mountains of Nazareth. All Judea prepared to be pouring into the city. I had taken a wife from among the Gauls who pretended to see into futurity, weeping and throwing herself at my feet. She said to me, "Beware, beware, and touch not that man, for he is holy." Last night I saw him in a vision. He was walking on the waters. He was flying on the wings of the wind. He spoke to the tempest and the fishes of the lake. All were obedient to him. Behold, the torrent in Mount Kidron flows with blood. The statues of Caesar are filled with gemonite. The columns of the interim have given away, and the sun is veiled in mourning like a vestal in the tomb. Ah, Pilate, evil awaits thee, if thou wilt not listen to the vows of thy wife. Dread the curse of a Roman Senate. Dread the frowns of Caesar. By this time, the marble stairs groaned under the weight of the multitude. The Nazarene was brought back to me. I proceeded to the halls of justice, followed by my guard, and asked the people in a severe tone what they demanded. The death of the Nazarene, was the reply. And for what crime? He has blasphemed. He has prophesied the ruin of the temple. He calls himself the Son of God, the Messiah, the King of the Jews. Roman justice, said I, punishes not such offenses with death. Crucify him! Crucify him! Cried the relentless rabble. The vociferations of the infuriated mob shook the palace to its foundations. There was but one who appeared to be calm in the midst of the vast multitude. It was the Nazarene. After many fruitless attempts to protect him from the fury of his merciless persecutors, I adopted a measure which at the moment appeared to me to be the only one that could save his life. All right, I think we're going to pick up on the other side.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
Which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us the second Friday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened
every
world.
week now, and so hopefully I'll be able to catch up on rest and also to rest my eyes and my voice. But at least I'm not doing 4 or 5 shows a week now, like I had been for several years in a row. It finally caught up to me, and my voice just couldn't take it, and so it forced me to pull back a little bit. And so I am grateful for a little bit more time off to do the other things that I need to do. But I do appreciate your concern, sister, and I thank all of you, those of you that do pray for us and that wish us well. Your prayers are very much appreciated, and your concern is very kind and grateful. All right, let us continue with this account. I do believe that we can make it through this story of Pontius Pilate. All right. There was but one who appeared to be calm in the midst of the vast multitude. It was the Nazarene. After many fruitless attempts to protect him from the fury of his merciless persecutors, I adopted a measure which at the moment appeared to me to be the only one that could save his life. I proposed, as it was their custom to deliver a prisoner on such occasions, to release Jesus and to let him go free, that he might be the scapegoat, as they called it. But they said Jesus must be crucified. I then spoke to them of the inconsistency of their course, as being incompatible with their laws, showing that no criminal judge could pass sentence on a criminal unless he had fasted 1 whole day, and that the sentence must have the consent of the Sanhedrin and the signature of the president of that court, that no criminal could be executed on the same day his sentence was fixed. And the next day, on the day of his execution, the Sanhedrin was required to review the whole proceeding. Also, according to their law, a man was stationed at the door of the court with a flag, and another a short way off on horseback, to cry the name of the criminal and his crime, and the names of his witnesses, and to know if anyone could testify in his favor. And the prisoner, on his way to execution, had the right to turn back 3 times and to plead any new thing in his favor. I urged all these pleas, hoping they might awe them into subjection, but they still cried, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" I then ordered Jesus to be scourged, hoping this might satisfy them, but it only increased their fury. I then called for a basin and washed my hands in the presence of the clamorous multitude, thus testifying that, in my judgment, Jesus of Nazareth had done nothing deserving of death. But in vain it was his life these wretches thirsted for. Often in our evil commotions have I witnessed the furious anger of the multitude. But nothing could be compared to what I witnessed on this occasion. It might have been truly said that all the phantoms of the infernal regions had assembled at Jerusalem. The crowd appeared not to walk, but to be borne off and whirled as a vortex rolling along in living waves from the portals of the praetorium even unto Mount Zion, with howling screams, shrieks, and vociferations such as were never heard in the seditions of the Pannonia, or in the tumults of the Forum. By degrees the day darkened like a winter's twilight, such as has been at the death of the great Julius Caesar. It was likewise the Ides of March. I, the continued governor of a rebellious province, was leaning against the column of my basilica, contemplating athwart the dreary gloom these fiends of Tartarus dragging to execution the innocent Nazarene. All around me was deserted. Jerusalem had vomited forth her indwellers through the infernal gate that leads to Germanica. An air of dissolution and sadness enveloped me. My guards had joined the cavalry, and the centurion, with the display of power, was endeavoring to keep order. I was left alone, and my breaking heart admonished me that what was passing at that moment appertained rather to the history of the gods than that of men. A loud clamor was heard proceeding from Golgotha, which borne on the winds seemed to announce an agony such as was never heard by mortal ears. Dark clouds lowered over the pinnacle of the temple, and setting over the city, covered it as with a veil. So dreadful were the signs that men saw both in the heavens and on the earth, that Dionysius the Areopagite is reported to have exclaimed, either the author of nature is suffering, or the universe is falling apart. Whilst these appalling scenes of nature were transpiring, there was a dreadful earthquake in Lower Egypt which filled everybody with fear and scared the superstitious Jews almost to death. It is said Balthasar, an aged and learned Jew of Antioch, was found dead after the excitement was over. Whether he died from alarm or grief, it is not known. He was a strong friend of the Nazarene. Near the first hour of the night, I threw my mantle around me and went down into the city toward the gates of Golgotha. The sacrifice was consummated. The crowd was returning home, still agitated. It is true, but gloomy, taciturn, and desperate. What they had witnessed had stricken them with terror and remorse. I also saw my little Coman cohort pass by mournfully, the standard bearer having veiled his eagle in token of grief, and I overheard some of the Jewish soldiers murmuring strange words which I did not understand. Others were recounting miracle very like those which have often smitten the Romans by the will of the gods. Sometimes groups of men and women would halt, and then looking back toward Mount Calvary would remain motionless in expectation of witnessing some new prodigy. I returned to the praetorium, sad and pensive. On ascending the stairs, the steps of which were still stained with the blood of the Nazarene, I perceived an old man in a suppliant posture, and behind him several Romans in tears. He threw himself at my feet and wept most bitterly. It is painful to see an old man weep, and my heart was being It is painful to see an old man weep, and my heart being already overcharged with grief. We, those strangers, wept together. And in truth, it seemed that the tears lay very shallow that day, with many whom I perceived in the vast concourse of people. I never witnessed such an extreme revulsion of feeling. Those who betrayed and sold him, those who testified against him, and those who cried, "Crucify him! We have his blood," all slunk off like cowardly curs and washed their feet with vinegar. As I am told that Jesus taught a resurrection and a separation after death, if such should be the fact, I am sure it commenced in this vast crowd. "Father," said I to him, after gaining control of my feelings, "who are you, and what is your request?" "I am Joseph of Arimathea," replied he, "and am come to beg of you, upon my knees, the permission to bury Jesus of Nazareth." "Your prayer is granted," said I to him. And at the same time I ordered Manlius to take some soldiers with him to superintend the interment, lest it should be profaned. A few days after, the sepulchre was found empty. His disciples proclaimed all over the country that Jesus had risen from the dead, as he had foretold. This created more excitement even than the crucifixion. As to its truth, I cannot say for certain, but I have made some investigation. Of the matter, and so you can examine for yourself and see if I am in fault as Herod represents. Joseph buried Jesus in his own tomb. Whether he contemplated his resurrection or calculated to cut him another, I cannot tell. The day after he was buried, one of the priests came to the praetorium and said they were apprehensive that his disciples intended to steal the body of Jesus and to hide it, and then make it appear that he had risen from the dead, as he had foretold, and of which they were perfectly convinced. I sent him to the captain of the royal guard, Malchus, to tell him to take the Jewish soldiers and to place as many around the sepulchre as were needed. Then, if anything should happen, they could blame themselves and not the Romans. When the great excitement arose about the sepulchre being found empty, I felt a deeper solicitude than ever. I sent for Malchus, who told me he had placed his lieutenant, Ben Isham, with 100 soldiers around the sepulchre. He told me that Isham and the soldiers were very much alarmed at what had occurred there that morning. I sent for this man, Isham, who related to me, as near as I can recollect the following circumstances. He said that at about the beginning of the 4th watch, they saw a soft and beautiful light over the sepulchre. He at first thought that the women had come to embalm the body of Jesus, as was their custom. But he could not see how they had gotten through the guards. While these thoughts were pressing through his mind, behold, the whole place was lighted up, and there seemed to be crowds of the dead in their grave clothes. All seemed to be shouting and filled with ecstasy, while all around and above was the most beautiful music he had ever heard, and the whole air seemed to be, there seemed to be a reeling and a swimming of the earth, so that he turned so sick and faint that he could not stand on his feet. He said that the earth seemed to swim from under him, and his senses left him, so that he knew not what did occur. I asked in what condition he was when he came to himself. He said he was flying on the ground with his face down. I asked him if he could not have been mistaken as to the light. Was it not day that was coming in the east? He said at first he thought of that, but at a stone's cast, it was exceedingly dark. And then he remembered it was too early for day. I asked him if his dizziness might not have come from being wakened up and getting up too suddenly, as it sometimes had that effect. He said he was not, and had not been asleep all night, as the penalty was death for him to sleep on duty. He said that he had He said that he had let some of the soldiers sleep at a time. Some were asleep. Then I asked him how long the scene lasted. He said he did not know, but he thought nearly an hour. He said it was hid by the light of day. I asked him if he went to the sepulchre. After he had come to himself, he said no, because he was afraid that just as soon as relief came, they all went to their quarters. I asked him if he had been questioned by the priests. He said he had. They wanted him to say it was an earthquake and that they were asleep, and offered him money to say that the disciples came and stole Jesus. But he saw no disciples. He did not know that the body was gone until he was told. I asked him what was the private opinion of those priests he had conversed with. He said that some of them thought that Jesus was no man, that he was not a human being, that he was not the Son of Mary, that he was not the same that was said to be born of the Virgin in Bethlehem. That the same person had already been on the earth before with Abraham and Lot, and at many times and places. This is all confirmed by the Aramaic Targum and the many passages on the word of the Lord. It seems to me that if the Jewish theory be true, these conclusions are correct, for they are in accord with this man's life, as is known and testified by both friends and foes. For the elements were no more in his hands, that the clay in the hands of the potter. He could convert water into wine. He could change death into life, disease into health. He could calm the seas, still the storms, call up fish with a silver coin in its mouth. Now, I say, if he could do all these things, which he did, and many more, as the Jews all testify, and it was during these things that created this enmity against him, he was not charged with criminal offenses, nor was he charged with violating any law, nor of wronging any individual in person. And all these facts are known to the thousands as well by his foes and by his friends. I am almost ready to say, as did Manlius at the cross, truly, this was the Son of God. And now, noble sovereign, this is as near the facts in the case as I can arrive. And I have taken pains to make the statement very full, so that you may judge of my conduct upon the whole. As I hear that Antipater has said many hard things of me in this matter, with the promise of faithfulness and good wishes to my noble sovereign, I am your most obedient servant, Pontius Pilate. All right, that takes us to the end of that narrative. We will return after this break. and I will consider what next we should go into. I'll look it over the 3 minutes of this break. We'll be right back, everyone.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses?
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible.
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us the second Friday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I do believe that I will be able to read through this very small and quick portion. This is Herod's defense before the Senate. And so I'll go ahead and get on with it so that we can make it through this aspect of the narrative. This is Herod Antipater's defense before the Roman Senate in regard to his conduct at Bethlehem. This is found on a scroll in the Library of the Vatican. In the following record, Mark Herod Antipater's defense. Noble Romans, in the case whereof I am accused, these Jews are all people the most superstitious, and no more to be trusted than the Hindus. They have taught themselves to believe in but one God, who dwells in another world, so they can neither see nor hear him, nor in any way approach him by their senses. They believe that he is unchangeable and unreproachable, that he can only manifest himself through some angel or spirit, or some light, or the thunder, or any strange and uncommon phenomena. Hence, they are all superstitious, that they can be made to believe anything. In order that you may know what kind of people I have to deal with, I will give you some of their maxims. When the sun shines, they say their God smiles. When it is cloudy, they say he frowns. When it thunders, they say he is angry, and they hide themselves. When it rains, they say he weeps, and many other similar sayings. Now, my lords, you can see at once how far this people might be led if they could be made to believe the strange God was at their head and took up their cause. Now, as a foundation for all this foolishness, they have a book and a set of men called priests who read and expound this book to them, and they will believe anything these priests tell them. To show how far that they may be led, these priests tell them that some thousands of years ago, when Moses died, and went to where this strange God dwelt. He was gone 40 days, and when he came back, he brought this book, which was written by this God for their government. Now, to prove the whole thing is a forgery, the book is wholly for the benefit of the priests. The poor have to work and to toil continually and pay half what they make, and sometimes almost starve to support the lazy priests and to furnish them and their women with plenty of their garments, of fine garments and wine and the best of food. The priests tell these poor Jews that this God requires them to bring the best calf, the best lamb, and the best flour and oil to the temple, to offer in sacrifice, and the priests and their party get all of this for themselves. I often tell them, when they object to the Roman taxation, that they could keep up 1,000 Caesars for much less than it costs to keep up their God and his priests. The leaders are always quarreling and fighting among themselves and dividing off in different sects. Miracles are as common as poor physicians. The Essenes are noted for both. They prophesy, work miracles, see visions, and have dreams, and stand in reputation as quack doctors. They pretend to know all about angels, ghosts, and spirits. They profess the art of managing ethereal citizens of the transatmospheric regions. They live together in colonies. Some of them are cenobitic and some are celibate communities. They maintain that all of them are priests and high priests, therefore, their daily baptisms are as the priests on duty. They wear the Levitical garments. Their tables are their altars, and their meals their only sacrifices. With this sanctimonious misanthropy, which is their highest virtue, they use the alleged method of expounding the scriptures. I lost my place, sorry. They maintain that all of them are priests and high priests, therefore their daily baptisms as the priests on duty. They wear the Levitical garments. Their tables are their altars and their meals their only sacrifices. With this sanctimonious misanthropy, which is their highest virtue, they use the allegorical method of expounding the scripture. While we think and reason and reflect and use our faculties to obtain our ideas of duty, they shut their eyes and fold their hands, waiting to be endued with power from their God. And when they get it, it proves to be all to their own advantage and interest, to the ruin of their fellow citizens. The Sadducees are another party, equally absurd. They get their doctrine from Antigonus Socius, who was president of the Sanhedrin. They reject all the traditions of the scribes and the Pharisees. And then we find the sophor or the scribe. They are the writers and the expounders of the law. The Pharisees derived from pharas, to separate from all men on account of their sanctity. But it is useless to name all these sects with their peculiar views, each different from the other. They are all strict monotheists, yet they differ from each other more than the polytheists do. I have given this detailed description of the people and their various sects, that the Senate may have an idea of the situation I am in. But if you could be here and see and associate with them as I do, to see them with all their sanctity of life, and then behold their treachery to each other, see how they lie and steal the one from the other, and then see how low and base are their priests, you would be much better qualified to judge of my actions. As to this great excitement at Bethlehem, 3 strange, fantastic-looking men called on my guards at the gate and asked them where was the babe born that was to be king of the Jews. My guards told me of it, and I ordered the men to be brought into court. I asked them who they were. One of them said he was from Egypt. I asked what was their business. He said they were in search of the babe that was born to rule the Jews. I told them that I ruled the Jews under Augustus Caesar. But he had said this babe would rule when I was gone. I told him not unless he was born under the purple. I asked him how he knew of this babe. He said that they had all had a dream the same night about it. I told them that the devil played with our brains when we were asleep. He drew a parchment roll from his bosom and read in the Hebrew language, "Thou, Bethlehem, least among the kingdoms of the world, out of thee should come a man that should rule all people." I asked him, "Who wrote that?" He said, "The God of heaven." I asked him where he got that parchment. He said it was the law of the covenant of the Jews. He also said a star had traveled before them all the way to Jerusalem. I told him his God was mistaken, that Bethlehem was not a kingdom, neither was it the least in the kingdom of Judea. I told them that they were superstitious fanatics and ordered them out of my presence. But the excitement grew until it became intense. I found nothing could control it. I called the Hillel court, which was the most learned body of talent in Jerusalem. They read out of their laws that Jesus was to be born of a virgin in Bethlehem, and that he was to rule all nations. Okay. I had to fix something there. And all the kingdoms of the world were to be subject to him, and that his kingdom should never end, but his appointees should continue this rule forever. I found this court just as sanguine as those strangers. And in fact, it was in everybody's mouth. I thought I could discover already a sort of deriding and mocking spirit among the lower classes in regard to the Roman authority. Now, it is my opinion that the scene that occurred at Bethlehem was nothing more than a meteor traveling through the air, or the rising vapor from the foot of the mountains out of the low, marshy ground, as is often the case. And as to the noise heard by Melchior and those shepherd boys, it was only the echo of the shepherds on the other side of the mountain calling the night watch, or scaring away the wolves from their flocks. But although this was nothing but a phenomena of nature and the whole thing a delusion, it did not better the condition I was in. A man will contend for a false faith stronger than he will for a true one, from the fact that the truth defends itself. But a falsehood must be defended by its adherents. First, to prove it to themselves, and secondly, that they may appear right in the estimation of their friends. But the fact is, this case is about as follows. The Roman taxation was cutting off the support of the priests, and they were smarting under it. Again, the double taxing, that is, the tithes to the priests and to the tax of the Romans, was bearing heavily on the common people, so that they could not stand it. And the priests saw that one of them would have to go unpaid. And as they saw the Romans were the stronger, they wrote these things in the Tosafot and read it daily in all their synagogues and temples, that the Jewish mind might be prepared for this event. Knowing that they would magnify a mote into a mountain when it came to anything outside of the common laws of nature, and knowing that if they could get the common people to believe in the things, there would be no end to their fighting. And from all appearances, the excitement was fast driving the people that way. It had already become a byword with the children of Bethlehem and Jerusalem that the Jews had a new king, that neither Caesar nor Herod it had already become a byword with the children of Bethlehem and Jerusalem that the Jews had a new king, that neither Caesar nor Herod would reign anymore, and that they would have to pay no more taxes to keep up the Roman government. Such talk and sayings were common among the poorer classes of society. So I saw an insurrection brewing fast, and nothing but a most bloody war as the consequence. Now, under these circumstances, what was I to do? In my honest judgment, it was best to pluck the undeveloped flower in its bud, lest it should grow and strengthen, and finally burst, and shed its deadly poison over both nations, and impoverish and ruin them forever. My enemies can see I could have no malice toward the infants of Bethlehem. I took no delight in listening to the cries of the innocent mothers. May all the gods forbid. No, I saw nothing but an insurrection and a bloody war were our doom, and in this the overthrow and downfall to some extent of our nation. These are the grounds of my action in this matter. I am satisfied I did the best that I could be done under the circumstances, as my motive was purely to do the best I could for my whole country. I hope you will so consider it. And I submit this statement for your consideration, promising faithfulness and submission to your judgment. Herod Antipater. The next portion, which I'm not going to read, but I just wanted to tell you about, because I think we are done with this series. It is Herod Antipater's defense before the Roman Senate in regard to the execution of John the Baptist. It's not very lengthy, but certainly we don't have time to make it through this evening. However, the stories of John the Baptist are very interesting, especially in connection to the separation of the Essenes and to the Qumran community. And so that's a very interesting aspect of the insight that is also provided here. In the following chapter, we have the Hillel letters regarding God's providence to the Jews. And this was written by Hillel the third. But again, we're going to skip that. There's a few letters that were written by him that, go through the progression of the story. All right, let me see. There's like 6 letters, it looks like here. 7th letter from Hillel. And actually, the manuscript concludes with all of these letters from Hillel. I do believe that this was the book of the month, if I'm correct. You can join our newsletter, and we do send out a discount. Just write to Justin or Joy at Sacred Word at www.sacredwordpublishing.com. This February the 28th at 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. we will be doing our first live broadcast on the Cryptos for Ding Dongs Discord group. And so if you have any questions about the cryptocurrency groups and the platforms and the things that we've been talking about here, which I'm glad that it is benefiting so many of you. And also I have information because many of you tell me that you're not able to gain access to certain projects because you're in a part of the world where you're not able to access certain sites. Well, there is a way around this, that all you have to do is use a VPN, and that you can go to a website called Retail Me Not, and there, if you search VPN, you can find an 70 to 80% discount on different VPNs. NordVPN is one that some people use. There are others. But, again, that's one of the ways, because for whatever reason, if you're wanting to use Binance, the Binance US is a lot different than the regular Binance. In fact, you're not able to set up what's called the BSC, the Binance Smart Chain, to take advantage of some of these, like Pancake Swap and Bakery Swap, which are projects that I do recommend people get involved in. They are, they have been taken over what is the decentralized financial, where that used to be predominantly run on Uniswap and SushiSwap. The Binance Smart Chain, Pancake Swap, and Bakery Swap have been attracting a lot of interest. And because their gas fees are minimal, like literally 3 cents a transaction, one can benefit from utilizing these platforms. And the Binance, it all runs on BNB instead of Ethereum, and it's much faster as well. That the transactions all, take just a matter of seconds, really. And so we have arrived to the end of the show. There's just a few more minutes here. We've got 2 minutes, and so we'll pick up next week. I'll be on with Rob Wednesday night, and then the week thereafter, he'll be back on our show here at Secrets Revealed on Thursday. And in the interim, I'm not sure as to who will be joining me. The calendar is set for several months out, and so I'm sure that we'll be bringing some interesting guests to all of you as well, and we'll be continuing our monthly shows and programs. And so those of you that can, please do join us Saturday night as well for our Digital Readers Club. It will be broadcast from 7 to 8:30 p.m. We are reading currently from the Testaments of the Patriarchs, and specifically the Testaments of the 12 prophets, the 12 patriarchs of Jacob's children. And so, it's been a wonderful study reading through all these ancient manuscripts and sharing them with all of you, those of you that join our groups. It's certainly interesting study. And, so many of these manuscripts being ones that most of you have never heard about or had chance to read, and just how much information they have contained within them, which alludes to the word of the Lord as the helper of the ancient patriarchs and the prophets. And their, the books of Enoch are mentioned, the prophecies of the coming of the Messiah, the things that are written about and declared in the Targum with 217 allusions to the word of the Lord, Christ as the Savior Messiah. These things which are excluded from the other modern English translations. Again, they verify, just as this manuscript did, that Christ has been long involved with the early patriarchs of the nation of Israel. All right. God bless all. Good night.
Thank you everybody for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.